Oh, there you go. Audio. Hello, you there? Hello? Hmm. Anybody home? Oh. Hmm. I see you. Do you hear me? Hello?
Hello.
Hello, Marcus.
Yes. Hi. How's it going?
We have made a connection. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm having some repairs done in the condo today, so I'm going to be on audio.
Whatever suits you is fine with me.
Fabulous.
I guess you see me or no, you can't.
I can see you just fine.
Okay, well, you might remember we met at the
Oh yeah, definitely. Once I saw you, I was like, oh yeah, I know exactly who this is. So yeah.
guy, the aggressive, crazy. Anyway, first of all, thank you so much for being receptive to this interview. It's really struck me passionately this uh, this subject matter, and I'm kind of wet behind my ears about this, and I wanted to, you know, get enlightened and informed. I had just last Sunday I spoke to Reese Palmer.
Yes.
And I got a little point of view from her and her experiences, which I found interesting. But I thought I'd also like to talk to you.
By all means.
Here's some, and I'm just gonna. This isn't really. I didn't really come up with a lot of questions, but I just got some things that I'd like to discuss with you. First of all, do you think like here's a statement that, I mean, obviously country music is the way it is. It's it's pretty pathetic to me that we've had so many genres of music. We had so many glory periods of like Motown, Stax, even in the 70s and 80s, Philadelphia, all these black owned record labels, you know, pronouncing their music. And yet there was never any kind of a black owned country label unless I'm misinformed.
You're slightly misinformed there. I'll say that every label that existed released country on a sub-label at some point. Motown released country on a sub-label, even on a mainstream level, like the Supremes have an album of country covers that exists.
Right.
Yeah, and Stax was definitely in the country business by the end. They were absolutely trying to, when they had their last distribution deal, they were trying to move into country, just because, you know, like all of their artists all have history with people that later moved to Nashville. So that goes all the way back to Rufus Thomas recording for Sam Phillips in the 1950s. Like, that's a thing. So by the time you get to the point where Stax is making $10 million a year by 1972, 1973, they're definitely looking at country as a opportunity. I'll say also that, you know, like other labels that dove into the Black community also looked at country as well as something that was potentially worthwhile. So that's the thing. It's always been a thing. The only issue is that there's been a divide by cause of systematic racism between country and R&B.
So now, why don't you elaborate on that? You say country and R&B.
Yes. So when rock and roll comes through and pulls together Black culture and white culture into this seamless sound that can be enjoyed by all people, that is made by people on both sides of the racial fence. Music that is not rock and roll has a moment where it's like, okay, well, do we embrace this racial togetherness that is making rock so popular? Or do we stay entrenched in our lanes and push into more racially defined lines?
Right.
Country stays on the side of white people, white working class people, and R&B doubles down in the lane of Black working class people. There's no desire to push the two together. That stays for something that's, you know, a higher hanging fruit.
Got you. Yeah. Now, why do you think that? Economically, was that just?
It's the economic risk of it, right? So if you're a country label, and you know you can make X million dollars by gate posting your music and only marketing it towards one very specific kind of person, and you know exactly how much money you're going to make, almost to the cent, you're going to continue to do that instead of trying something radical that you know is going to alienate your core fan base.
Gotcha.
You know that's going to alienate your core fan base. Like, you already know that because you understand the nature of racism in America in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s.
Right.
There's a logical reason why Charlie Pride is the only Black artist. It's logic. It's like, okay, well, we need one so that Black people don't, so that the Black people in America in general does not perceive us to be wholly racist. We will have one, and he'll statistically be one of the best to ever do it, but he'll just be our one. Whereas in R&B, it's like, okay, well,
yeah,
we have a Black chart for us, and we know how much these records sell, and it's less than white music, but still at the same time, if we occasionally dive these records across the line, we know that they will sell. I mean, that's the Motown principle since day one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we dive a Marvin Gaye record or a Martha and the Vandellas record or a Supremes record or a Four Tops or Temptations record across the line, we know it's going to do well.
Right.
We're not going to dive every one of their records across the line.
Right.
But, every so often we'll make sure that there's one that sneaks across and starts to make some noise.
Mm-hmm.
To that end, we'll employ white people to market our records.
Got you. We'll employ white people to help market the record.
Right.
Indie promotion men, whoever, whatever, strategists who know
it's
how
a strategy.
Right.
That's based around systematic racism on some level, bolstering rock and roll until the British invasion, which then causes rock and roll to hiccup in a strange way because it's like, wait, there are white people from Europe who make black music better than the black people and the white people. So we're actually not racist at all if we support the Rolling Stones or the Beatles or Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or Herman's Hermits or Eric Burden and the Animals, whatever, so on and so forth.
Right. Gotcha.
They're just from Europe. It's okay. They're from the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So sure, they're white, but they're not white Americans. And we can agree that they make music that in many ways is better than both the black and the white artists. So it's okay. And rock and roll doesn't come back around until the 80s. And by that point, it's a whole different other thing because the money in rock is so enormous that taking black people out of the genre makes sense. Because black people also have R&B and rap as well that are ascendant.
Ascending, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a fascinating confluence of things that allows for country to maintain this, antiquated hold upon systematic racist defined ideology.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so presently, I mean, because you make it clear that R&B, rock and roll merging together, R&B kind of was the black music that was able to cross over and go mainstream, as you said, right? Motown did not have to have white artists to sell their music. They sold their music to everybody. Yes. They were able to achieve that through some, like you said, utilizing white labor, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
To cross it over. Okay. Now, here's my question. Is there just not many, even during this time, is there just not that many of a pool of black who really want to get into country music? Is it all shifting? And even today, has it all shifted towards, hip hop or whatever pop music?
No, I'll say this. I'll say that black people have always had a desire to tell stories. Black people have always had a desire to play musical instruments. Mm-hmm. Black people have always had a desire to create music that appeals to a lowest common denominator demographic. These are three things that country music does very well.
Fantastic.
Tells stories, plays instruments, and appeals to a lowest common denominator demographic. Black people do this intrinsically. White people learn how to do it from black people even. So the thing that occurred in 2020 that makes the George Floyd situation so fascinating is that it essentially caused a reset for what we knew to be American culture. So you're saying, okay, we have to go back in history, the annals of history, and rewrite about 3 or 4 things. So slavery, for instance, not permissible. The civil rights movement, the wrong side won. All of these things that when you look at country music as a thing that is that benefits directly from the quote unquote wrong side winning the civil rights movement, from the existence of slavery, from all of these things. It's the very point where America can point and go, this is wrong. Fundamentally.
Got you.
There are so many white people here. There are so few black people, so few black and marginalized people here, that we have to change immediately. And two countries' credit, country attempted initially to open doors and make things happen. Now, of course, because countries' charts and countries' numbers are so driven by people who for multiple generations have been told that only white people make this music. Not even explicitly, but it's more implicit. Like the only difference between Carly Pearce and Taylor Swift is a shade of hair color. But that's a key difference. If there's not a black woman around or a multitude of black or Latina women or queer women or whatever around, the fact that Carly Pearce is a strawberry blonde and Taylor Swift is a bottle blonde, that's important. And now we're fundamentally having to change that. And country, to its credit, started out of the gate very strong by immediately saying that Mickey Guyton mattered. Immediately, Mickey Guyton matters. She's been in our system since 2008.
Right. Now she's 37 and she matters. Now,
it's like, hey, she's 37, but you know she's been here. So hold on, don't get mad at us. We knew we had her. Don't be mad. She's now a star. She's a superstar. She's on everything. And to their credit, CMT hired, I work for CMT, so I can tell you, they hired Reese Palmer to be on the Hot 20. It's like, yeah, we had her. She's been here. We've known she's here.
Right.
She's there. You know, you talk to her. She's there. They brought her right in. Now the fascinating part is, and on the male side, it's like, okay, we have Jimmy and Kane, and we just elevated Jimmy and Kane to a different level of prominence. Jimmy's on Dancing with the Stars. Kane is a MTV Video Music Award nominated artist now. Kane won Artist of the Year.
Yeah.
At the CMA Awards, whole thing. Like, okay, we're doing it. We've done it. But now the fascinating point is country, just like any other genre, is aware that there are multitudes of other black people who make this music. Country's known this in the 1970s when, you know, they intentionally didn't let Bobby Womack in. And Opie McClinton had to stay on the outside for God knows how long.
Right.
So they've known this. They know who Linda Martell was.
Of course.
They know who Nico Marx was. Like, they've known. But there was no impetus because, you know, like we hadn't watched a black person be murdered on national television. And when that happened, that changed everything because it's like, okay, so wait. So they killed a black man on national television. We've never done this before. So like racism is now real. Now we have to like fundamentally change this. And all these black people that we've known are here, but we are afraid because we have gateposted our industry against racial, social, or economic change for 99 years. Literally 99 years. Okay, now we have to change suddenly. This is going to be hard, but we have some people here already. And now the big question is about making ones and twos and fives and sixes into tens and 20s.
Right.
And that's the hard part, because country is clearly okay with fives and sixes. They used to be okay with ones and twos. We know that they are now okay with fives and sixes. Like, having multiple Black artists in country is not problematic to the average country fan. They may not support them in the same way that they support Luke Combs. But if you ask the country fan who Jimmy Allen is, they certainly know who Jimmy is, and they probably like him okay. They're not going to support him to the level that they support even Morgan Wallen. But they know he's there. It's like, okay, cool. So now you have to get to the point where, and this has to happen quickly, remember, because America like pulled back the curtain on its worst secret. We have to very quickly now balance country out. Very quickly, like within the next 3 to 5 years, if we don't balance country out, then this ultimately means that America is failed as a country.
Wow, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, like if we don't balance it out, if we don't suddenly have 25 Black country stars that are as viable as the top 25
absolutely
country stars,
absolutely,
and they have to be viable. They can't just be people. They can't just be randomly selected people, because then they don't make hits, and country is all about hits.
Exactly. It's the film industry. You're either a blockbuster out of the gate or you're not. I mean, you got to have that sort of mentality. That's the way it works.
Yeah, so that's where things like what we did at Americana Fest this year become important.
Okay.
Because for me, it's like, okay, great. We have fives and sixes, but I know we need 25. And I'm like, okay, where do these other 20 people come from? So I'm like, let's bring them all to Nashville. Let's literally bring them all to Nashville and put them all in a house. Because one thing that white country has done for 99 years is support each other so that they create an ecosystem that is based on ultimately upon themselves. Like Brad Paisley knew, like Randy Travis knew who Brad Paisley was.
Right.
Immediately, like, oh, you're Brad, you're from West Virginia. I like you, okay. When it's time for you to need a hit, I'll send my songwriter to work with you or whatever. The way that Nashville has worked for the history of country music. So it's like, okay, we're going to do the same thing with Black artists. All of the Black artists who make country music, like a solid, I'd say 60% of them, which, given that Black artists who make country music hid in corners and didn't say that they made country music for the last 75 years, is pretty impressive. They were all in the same city at the same time, all meeting each other and engaging in understanding that they were in the room together for a week in Nashville at Americana Fest. Right. So that minimally, to each other, they knew that they existed, but also to the industry at large.
Right. Exactly.
The industry at large is also aware that these Black artists exist.
Mm-hmm.
And they wish to be counted and seen, which has never happened.
Right.
Black artists have never been in a situation where existing, wanting to be seen, and needing to be counted were things that were a part of their conversation. But they are now, which is a fundamentally different time that has never existed in country music before. Americana too, across the board. So that's the key difference. And that's what makes this time important. And that's what makes your question important, in the sense that these are artists who now have to be counted and they have to be seen. And they were always there, but now they have to be there.
Okay, so what is country's effect today on the modern African American? And let's look at urban. I mean, obviously my stereotype imagery that I get, I'm from originally Los Angeles, And I know that the young urban African American in a stereotype gravitates towards the hip hop. Can this music penetrate culturally into it and give us this rich pool of talent and give it this rich pool of talent?
That's the next conversation.
Great. And how do you propose that?
Engages with people who have never been engaged with country music before.
Exactly.
And that's
how can anyone know what sushi tastes like if they're not given a sample to make a decision on? Correct?
Hold on a second. I need to call you right back.
Gotcha. No problem.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm here.
All right. Okay.
Do what you got to do. Wow. Oh.
All right, I'm back.
Hey, whatever you got to do.
No problem. Yeah, I had a delivery at my front door, and they kept calling me, and I'm like, this is not okay.
Well, your voice is very important.
Thank you. So, like I was saying, like the issue is that, and it's funny right now because the trap wave, the country trap wave is so hot right now, is that Black music has always played well in country music as sang by white people. This goes all the way back through Kenny Rogers making R&B records with Lionel Richie. and purporting that they were country songs, which we know better. And, you know, even crazier when Kenny Rogers got with the Bee Gees and made R&B records, it purported that they were country records.
Right.
So this is the thing, and Conway Twitty, and, you know, there's a long lineage that extends. Right now, Fancy Like is the most popular song in America, and it's ostensibly a trap song. It's a trap R&B song that a white man is singing. So historically, there isn't a space for Black artists making music that white people make for white people that sounds Black. So essentially what you have to do is you have to like disengage country from its tradition and recontextualize it in the Black realm.
Oh my God. That is exactly what I wanted. I'd like to make a record, a Black country record, okay? A Black country record.
Yeah, so I'll tell you right now that there are Black, quote unquote, Black country records that exist. There's a fascinating thing that is happening in the sense that the top female stars of Americana and country right now are all people who are well versed in the country tradition.
Right.
Be it Allison Russell playing the banjo and Amethyst Kia playing the banjo, and anybody who was in the Our Native Daughters project. Be that Brittany Spencer being inspired by the Chicks and Jennifer Nettles, and then singing Independence Day at the Grand Ole Opry. Like, there's a real thing that's happening. Mickey Guyton having a voice that is very much akin to Carrie Underwood's. Like, there's all of this traditional country stuff that's being done by Black women. And the only thing is that you have to wait for that to make its way around to the traditional urban Black audience, because that's the audience that'll really change that, that'll really push the needle. Like, the more esoteric Black audience that enjoys progressive, quote unquote, sounds are already here. They're already awake. Like, we've already woken them up in the last 12 months. Like, they're all aware of Alabama.
Right.
They're all starting to, like, you know, listen to Adia Victoria and so on and so forth. But the next level of this is pulling the traditional urban crowd in the country, which can happen, but it's going to take really good R&B records to make it happen.
Really good R&B country records, right?
Right. So, like, it's funny in the sense that people are going to listen to a lot of this music.
I know.
And they're going to say, "Oh, that's just an R&B song." And it's like, no, but you have to look at the inspiration that the artist had in making it. And, like, if you listen to Adia Victoria's album, she listened to Alan Lomax's field recordings. So she's coming like, yeah, her record sounds soulful, but it's inspired by 100-year-old folk records.
Right.
So when you listen to, like, Brittany Spencer, Sober and Skinny, it's like, you're like, wow, that's a really powerful poppy R&B record. But it's like, but you know that she grew up on the Chicks, right? So that R&B you hear actually is being transmuted somehow through 90s pop R&B.
Right.
So, like, 90s pop country, rather, into R&B. So, like, when you look at it, you have to look at the pathways of this music now, more so than, like, flatly listening to the music, which is the way that we told people to listen to rock and roll a million moons ago when it started to go left and right. And we had the British come in and they started taking soul records, and they started taking blues records, you know, all of Led Zeppelin's entire first 5 years in the United States
Right.
is, you know, it's all Robert Johnson records. And like, it's like, okay, so is this rock and roll? Yes, it is. But it's inspired by blues records. Yes, we know, but it's still rock and roll. So it's the same thing with Black women making country. It's like, well, yes, we know it sounds like this, but listen to what it's inspired by. Like when you listen to Kane Brown, you listen to anything he does, and it's like, yeah, but have you ever heard him sing Randy Travis? When he sings Three Winning Crosses, that's all you need to know. It's like point blank period to end of the conversation. Like if you don't think that he isn't a country artist who happens to make R&B sounding records, I don't know what to tell you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, same goes for Jimmy Allen when you realize that like Charlie Pride is his greatest inspiration. Like there's a different way that you have to hear these records that I think that if you can convince Black audiences to make that leap, then it radically alters the country landscape.
Right. Now, what I know of Kane Brown, I remember him doing Randy Travis covers and things like that. I mean, that's how I first became aware of Kane Brown.
Most people did too, yeah. Like that was the thing, and it was fascinating because nobody ever stopped and said, "Oh God."
And I don't think,
what is he doing? Because they were so good.
Yeah. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't even know he was African American.
Nobody did until all of a sudden you saw a picture of him and you're like, oh wow, okay. Which is really fascinating when you think about it.
Now, here's something. When I say the Black country sound, I'm talking from every member of that production is Black, because the great stuff that I grew up on, if we take High Records, we take James Brown, we take Stax. Well, Stax was integrated, but we look at High and James Brown. We had Black musicians playing the music that gives it, I think, a uniquely, distinctly feel.
Yeah,
and it would be very interesting to cover that whole area in Black.
There's a fascinating thing that's actually going to take place next week on the CMA Awards.
Okay.
Mickey Guyton is performing "Love My Hair," her album single that, you know, is all about like her Black hair and white people wanting to touch it and feeling some level of wanting to reclaim her own heritage by being able to proclaim her hair uniquely as her own. And that whole production on stage is going to involve Brittany Spencer as a backup vocalist and also a player, and Madeline Edwards, who's a singer-songwriter who comes from jazz and R&B, also there playing too, to support Mickey, the Black female vocalist. So there's pockets now that exist where there are Black players who are available, you know, and there are Black creators who are available. Like there are session drummers who are Black in Nashville. Absolutely. There are session guitarists in Nashville who are Black. That's a thing. And the second now that you're starting to see Black artists with power wanting to put Black artists that they respect into these very prominent positions is important. And
Mm-hmm.
that's happening within a greater amount now.
Absolutely. Another thing I was going to ask you is, and especially when I spoke to Reese, and it is something that I'm sure Mickey, Linda Martell, they all go through, is that they don't really want a black sounding singer in those days. Is that, am I true in that?
You are very true in that. The hardest thing is that black voices on country music, like okay, so there's a difference. And this gets into the strange intersectionality of country music and blackness. Black voices that are uniquely Southern have a space in country music. So rural black voices, like Kane Brown is from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Right.
Jimmy Allen is from rural Delaware. Like Mickey Guyton is from Arlington, Texas.
Yeah. He's also Houston. Yeah.
Yeah. So like those are organically Southern spaces where the accent is prominent. Now, when it starts to get fascinating when you have Reese Palmer from St. Louis.
Right.
You have Brittany Spencer from Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
You have somebody like
Miko Mark.
Miko Marks, who is now based in San Francisco.
Right, Oakland. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's all of these people in all of these places.
So here's my question to you.
And but let me finish though.
Okay,
those voices are not organically Southern.
Right.
But because of the influences those artists have, they are making country music. The border that country has to jump over is being willing to hear black voices, which for a lot of Southern people who maybe have a tinge of racism or classism or sexism or something in their lineage, hearing that voice immediately dog whistles racism.
Right.
Like if you hear, like for instance, like if you hear Jay-Z or like 50 Cent or like, let me think of another great example. Cardi B, Rihanna on a country track, the record would scratch.
Right.
Because you're like, wait, they're not country.
What are they doing to country music? What are they doing?
Exactly. It's wild, but true.
Yeah, but one thing I would like to say is that now I know there was a type of song that was coming out of Memphis, like country soul, where some of like the Stax artists were doing country songs and doing it like in the soul fashion of the 60s and 70s.
Al Green's covers of Hank and Willie. Yeah.
Right. But here's my question. Why did white Nashville, why has they just smothered the black feel of country music?
In what sense?
In the sense of allowing the singer to be, the same kind of emotional bravo that, let's say, just for example, James Brown, Aretha Franklin, in that sense.
I'll say that the issue is that the artists don't have the range.
The artists don't have the range or the range?
The range, R-A-N-G-E.
Okay.
So a fascinating thing occurred maybe 5 years ago when Sam Hunt became a star. He was the first white artist in a very long time who could sing country music with an R&B flavor and have it feel more organically black than anybody had done in Nashville in quite some time.
Gotcha.
Since the 1980s.
Okay.
Since like Conway Twitty really dove in and got it.
Gotcha.
Like Sam Hunt is like a magician to a lot of people because he's done this thing. And if you listen to like Hard to Forget, you listen to Body Like a Back Road, and you listen to it and you're like, wow, okay, like there's something different here. And it's the fact that, you know, Sam has, because of his unique background, a closer tie to both black sounds because he, you know, played sports and hung out with and befriended a ton of black people.
Gotcha.
Like his like hangout on Saturday afternoon buddies are black guys. So like that's just part of his DNA that he can't remove. And on top of it, he's from where he's from. He's from rural Georgia. So of course, country music is a part of his background too.
Right.
So when he decides to sing, the voice that comes out of his body is unique because of a background he can't do anything about. My boys that I hang out with on Saturday afternoon are all brothers. My entire football team that I play on, they're all brothers.
Right.
My high school is probably 40% black. And I probably dated one or two of my friends' friends. So black women are part of my life too.
Right.
The whole thing. And also I'm like unrepentantly white because I am from where I'm from.
Gotcha.
So it's a fascinating thing that occurred there. And it's like not a thing that necessarily has transposed over and over and over again. The other closest person was Morgan Wallen, fascinatingly enough. And Morgan did what he did.
Right.
Which is funny when you look at Sam and Morgan as like this corollary of like, okay, so like Morgan Wallen clearly has a lot of black folk that are around him and near him and part of his existence. And he went out and said the N-word on camera and is semi-demonized because of it.
Right.
And Sam Hunt, same kind of background, didn't say it, you know, like is in some ways equally as successful. So there's a real conversation to be had now about country in an era where white artists are going to sound black more and more now than ever before.
And so black artists like, what are black artists supposed to sound? White?
Yes, and that's a fascinating point to bring up. Black art, because if you go all the way back to Kane Brown getting on, what made Kane Brown successful and popular was that he sounded like Randy Travis.
Exactly.
What should make, if Mickey Guyton didn't exist in 2020, right? If we tried to make Mickey Guyton a star in, say, 2017, the fact that she sounds like Martina McBride would be her big calling card. Like or the fact that she could have covered Before He Cheats and hit all of Carrie's octaves would have been her calling card.
Yeah.
And now we're at a place where, because 2020 happened and because Morgan Wallen happened, we've essentially taken Mickey's calling card away from her. And we forced her to have to do 100 other things to become popular. Which is sad because it's like, she should have an easier road than Kane did, in theory.
Right.
Because it's like, oh, all Carrie Underwood has to say is that the black lady's a good singer. It's not hard. You know, like, yes, she is very good at singing. Okay, cool. She's on. But instead now, because of all the things that have taken place, it's like Mickey has to be a civil rights activist. And also she has to demonize the most commercially successful country star of the last 25 years. In order to, like, she has to, like, jump over herself to become successful. When in all reality, she should be elevated by existing white hands in the genre. But now she has to do both pieces of that work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'd just like to also say, like, I just saw recently a film. There's another genre of music that happens to be the college that I'm going to, and it's called bluegrass. And if country is a little bit, if country is going through its thing, talk to me about bluegrass if you have any feelings about it, or
a ton
any
of feelings on bluegrass. A ton of feelings on bluegrass. There's a funny thing that's happening with bluegrass where artists who are very much like of a certain background, say like rural Americana and black.
Rural Americana and black. Okay.
Yes. Know bluegrass before they know country. So there's an argument to be said that if you're rural and black, country already keys you off as dog whistles you as immediately racist. Because pop country is the domain of white guys who, if you're just a native of whatever rural American city, are very racist to you in real life. So like the guy who looks like Jason Aldean, good, bad, or indifferent, he typically is the person who is aggrieving you in some way and calling you a word he should not say. So when you listen to these countrified sounds, you're digging back a little bit further and you're finding folk and bluegrass as your entry point. Because you're like, okay, well, I know nothing of these people. Maybe they're racist, maybe they're not. And in the pop conversation, at least there's always some kind of black person that's been around in that bluegrass space, whether it's Dom Flemons or Rhiannon Giddens or, someone.
Yeah, I'd say they're more.
You have somebody there who's like acclaimed as like a renowned performer in the space. That's the one thing I will say about bluegrass as compared to country, or even as compared to Americana, even deeper. Like Jake Blount is a queer black man and seen as a top tier rising star of bluegrass. Jake Blount, Blount.
Okay.
Yeah, Jake Blount is seen as a star on the rise, and he's queer and black, which 100 years ago in bluegrass, you'd be drawn and quartered.
Mm-hmm.
But now we say, oh yeah, he's great because his skills are phenomenal and his talent is phenomenal.
Now, there's only one thing. When I think of bluegrass, and you brought up like the Carolina Chocolate Drops, Giddens, and Flemons, I consider them more old-timey influenced. Bluegrass is a different kind of beast. It's much more slightly conservative in its approach.
I'd say, as much as it's conservative, they also figured out a way to solve for race and culture a lot quicker and a lot sooner than other genres did.
Yeah, I think you're meaning more of like an Americana, old-timey kind of folk.
Yeah, in that space,
genre.
they already solved for race out of the gate.
But if you went, look, I'm not that experienced with bluegrass festivals, but I'm dealing with the people in it. And I can tell you this, it's a 99.9% white.
Yes, but these are also people, yeah. I'd say these are also people who are cognizant and aware of the idea that it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now they don't know how to do better.
Exactly.
But they know it's wrong.
Exactly.
Like whenever I'm in Bristol, Tennessee, right?
Right. Okay.
Everybody in Bristol knows that racism is wrong. They have no solutions for this.
I know.
But they know that it's wrong. Like Morgan Wallen can play at the Speedway, but they still know that he did a really bad thing.
Right.
The worst thing. And it's like, damn it, we still like him, but what are we supposed to do? And that's a key point to bring up, because it's like, even in pop country, we're at a point where, and this is why, again, Black Opry had to happen, is that there are a lot of white people walking around going, well, okay, racism is wrong. Yes. Now what do we do to solve for it? I don't know. Like, what do we do?
Well, I know what you could do. I just want to give you a quote that Holly G said that just sums it up.
That's my baby sister. Like, I love her. I love Holly. Holly's family. Holly's family at this point.
This sums up what I've been feeling about this subject. There's not a lot of industries anymore where you can get away with the blatant disregard for minorities and people of color that you can in the country music industry or bluegrass music industry. That's for sure. And that's what I'm against, is that these are, these are almost like plantation-based minded thinking in 2020.
Yeah.
And I'm in a department, okay? There is not one, at this point, there is not one African American in the program. There was one last year, Trey Wellington, a banjo player. There's not one professor. There's not one adjunct professor who is of any other diversity other than white.
Yeah. And here is the thing that all of this is ultimately serving at the end of the day. Ultimately, all of the work serves creating a situation where, and I've said this to people before, I'll say it to you as well. The Black option in the room is the first, it's the best in its race, and it's the best overall. Anybody who is working right now in this situation, be it myself or Holly or Reese Palmer or Mickey Guyton or anybody who's like made it first past the post, Jimmy Allen, Kane Brown.
Exactly.
We're all the first of our kind for a generation of our race. We're all the first best in our job in the genre.
Right.
Or actually amongst ourselves, amongst Black people, because we're one of the very few Black people doing this. So we're first amongst ourselves. And then if you look at the numbers and you look at success. We're the first best in country. And all we're doing is, now that the door has been opened by the worst, most racist transgression to occur in modern American history, opening up the door, which to me is a fundamental difference than like the civil rights movement, where everybody stood up and got mad. And it was only because people died that the door kept opening for other people. But what we're doing that's different, and I look at this and I take this all the way back to like how Fred Hampton looked at the civil rights movement when he was a Panther and he was in Chicago. There's a film that just came out on HBO this year that showcases how he moved as an organizer, which is how I move as an organizer, which is like, as soon as Fred Hampton became popular, he immediately turned to the white people who were in rural Illinois and said, get on board with us because we have your back. He did the same thing with Latino gangs in Chicago, said, I'm here now. Get on board. We have your back. And then to other leaders within the Black Panther Party in other cities, he said, come to Chicago. I'll put you on because I'm here. And that's what we're doing in country. Everybody's putting on somebody else in multitudes. Like for me, the first intersectionality I saw was with the queer movement, because I look at Americana and I go, the best Americana artist is a lesbian. Brandi Carlile, proud lesbian.
Right. Yeah.
Out lesbian, allowed without alarm to excel. So I'm like, okay, well, if the best Black artist is yelled at by Twitter every day and was induced into labor by stress, you know, and the white lesbian lady is allowed to like make millions of dollars and live in Los Angeles in a big giant house on the high side of the hill, then maybe we should be intersecting with that side of the movement, because they're doing something that we're not doing and they're being allowed to get away with it. So maybe if we partner, then maybe we get with some stuff too.
There you go. There you go.
So it's like, all right, cool. So I'm like, all right, Black queer intersectionality is going to be a thing. And every time I get 2 steps ahead, I'm dragging somebody who is a queer creative along with me, along with a Latinx creative along with me the whole time. Every time I get to another height, there's like, it used to be, it was 1 because it was Holly. Now there's 2, because if you look at Annie Parnell, who just got her Rainy Day Fund grant yesterday, and if you look at Alyssa Donay, who's a photographer, who's up next, there's 2. And if I get to another level, I can name like 5 people who I have in my head is like, okay, I'm going to open up a door for them. And that's a fundamental difference that didn't exist in the civil rights movement, and it's never existed in this Black, queer, marginalized country space. Because if you think about it, it's like the Carolina Chocolate Drops got on as 1 act. As 5 people.
Right.
Then Our Native Daughters got on as 5 people.
Right.
And it was like they were gate posted and 10 posted and promoted as 1 act. 5 women, all singing banjo songs. 1 act. Carolina Chocolate Drops, this amazing act of 5 people, but they're really just 1. So instead, for me, I'm like, all right, well, if I get on here and I put Holly on there and Annie's over here and Mickey Guyton and Brittany Spencer on stage there, and Jimmy Allen's on stage here, and Kane Brown is touring every NBA arena there.
Right.
Now it looks different because you can't just say we're all one. And I didn't even touch like Allison Russell over here and Amethyst Kia over here and Adia Victoria over there. And it's like, and Yola over here. Right. You know, it's different. Like it's like when I say it's different now, it's different. Because I just named like 20 people.
Right.
Who are all over the map. If you catch us in the same city, we're in different venues. Like there was a night that was supposed to be important that did not transpire. You can take this down. October 22nd was supposed to be a night where Allison Russell was opening for Jason Isbell at the Ryman, and Yola was opening for Chris Stapleton at the Bridgestone.
Wow.
But because Chris has laryngitis, that didn't happen. But imagine if that had. That was on the books.
Yeah. Well,
the stars were
it will happen.
It wasn't even done on purpose.
Right.
The stars just aligned that way.
Right. It will happen then, you know. Yeah, obviously.
Right. But it's already there. That's the thing. It's like it's already there. And It's not like it was like this thing where like Chris Stapleton and Jason Isbell sat down in a clandestine room somewhere and said, we're gonna do this all on the same night. It's like, no. They just said the best artists for us to have as an opener are these Black women. And we are both wildly popular, enormously popular artists. So I'm going to be at the Bridgestone, he's going to be at the Ryman, and our best option for an opener, given the sound type of music that we make, just happens to be a Black woman. Even crazier is when you think about during the pandemic, the fact that Yola lived in Allison's backyard.
Okay.
It's all too wild right now. Like everything is aligning in such a way that it is astounding.
Now, obviously, your practice, your craft is journalism and promoting artists.
Yeah.
And I mean, is there any other like hands-on, A&Ring or label?
That's not a thing. That's not a thing necessarily. Like those are all things that I've done in other genres in the past. But for me, it's like, I look at the two things that I do the best as activism and storytelling.
Got you. Activism and storytelling. I like that.
So as a storyteller, I tell Black stories first, last, and best.
Yeah.
And as an activist, I increase the potential of the movement by doing nothing more than opening up doors and knocking them off the hinges so that you can't close them anymore. So like every move that I make, I try to make it with the power to essentially knock the door off the hinges so that like it's done in such a way that it's never been done before. It can't be replicated. Like it's a one-in-one occurrence.
Wow.
That fundamentally changes everything. It's like, yeah, so like we were sitting in a Zoom call and they were trying to figure out what to do for Americana Fest. And I was like, well, the obvious thing to do is to get a Black songwriting house and have all the Black songwriters together. And then it's like, oh, well, let's make it not just Black, but like, can we make it like brown and queer while we're at it? Yeah, sure. Then it was like on top of it, I then was hit up by Americana Fest to like, they sent out just a general call for panels. And I'm like, hey, Holly, you should probably pitch a panel. And it's like, okay, well, sure. And then I'm talking to Dale Geist at Country Queer, and Dale's like, I'm going to pitch a panel too. And I'm like, great. I'm like, make sure that we have intersectionality on both of these panels so that there are queer Black artists on the Black panel and Black queer artists on the queer panel. And then on top of that, we didn't even know that Americana Fest already had 2 other panels that they had already put into their own calendar that were going to be centered on the Black experience in Americana.
Gotcha.
So that created 4 panels with also on top of it, then there's like, actually, no, that makes 6, because then you had Valerie June doing guided meditation and Allison Russell walking you through her records. That's 6. That's 6 panels. That's more representation, Black representation and queer representation than Americana Fest has literally ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Then on top of that, we created a destination point for all of these artists that had never existed before. And we activated an actual space for all of these artists who never had space before that was specifically designated for them at Americana Fest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it completely changes the conversation.
Absolutely.
And moving forward, it was done so well, thankfully, that it's going to stay as a part of what they do at Americana Fest every year now. I feel like next year there will be a Black Opry or whatever kind of house at Americana Fest. There will also be multitudes of representation for Black and queer artists intersectionally at Americana Fest. And that's a necessity, because we opened the door in such a way, or I did, in such a way that now the door's knocked off the hinges. It's the same way when I started as a journalist in country music. My one goal in becoming a journalist in country music was to be the best journalist in country music. 11 months into me being a journalist in country music, I won the Chet Flipper Award that is, it celebrates excellence in country music journalism.
Mm-hmm.
And so now for the next calendar 12 months, the best writer in country music, because of this arbitrary award, but it's still an award that matters, is a Black man. Moreover, I'm not even from Nashville. I'm from Washington, D.C.
Right.
So now everything is wildly different.
I got you. And just very simple little ideas and formations of people have great effect on these events. And
but it's like, it's not even so much the people, it's the way in which you do it. Like, you have to do it with deliberate deliberate intention, with immediate fundamental change as the goal.
Right.
Like, you can't just be like, oh yeah, cool, I want to do a house, or cool, I want to do this because it'll be nice.
Right.
Like, no, that doesn't get the job done. You have to come in with like deliberate, immediate intent. Like, I am coming in here because I want this to change yesterday.
Right.
And I'm only going to do things that are going to move this at a pace that changes it in a way that says this should have happened yesterday. Because a funny thing you could add to this is that during the pandemic, during the first wave of the pandemic, we were all in quarantine. Every single white person that got on a Zoom, or every single white person that promised fundamental change and support for Black people, said that they were on board with doing this immediately because it's something that needed to change.
Mm-hmm.
So all I'm doing is generally just holding people to what they said they were going to do. Because sometimes you have to be honest.
Yeah.
And make people feel that honesty.
Well, like you take for me, for example, I've been a musician for a long time. I'm at a certain age where, I'm still doing it, but a different sort of ambition. than before. And it's hard to get passionate about something. I mean, besides writing your own material and, I mean, that gets old after a while. But when there's a purpose like this, and you sense, the injusticeness that, has traveled through time, that makes me passionate about something. It really does. It makes you want to do something. And it's not even just, it's for everybody in the end. It's just a positive transformation that has to take place. It's like the dead flowers have to be revitalized and bloom into color. You know what I mean? Instead of being stagnantly like, weeds.
Exactly.
So that's just, I mean, it really takes something like this to feel there's a purpose. Everything's got to have a purpose sometimes, and there's a great purpose for all this. And I think it's, I'm behind it 100%. And I'd like to be more involved in it if there's.
And you will be. Like, I'll tell you that straight up. I tell everybody that wants to be involved that that you do not know when, but your number will be called.
Yeah, well, I just leave it to you, Rabbi.
Thank you, brother.
I would like to, do some shows, just like integrated shows. The Black could be the headliner, just be part of it. I'd like to play with people that I respect, and give, like this particular area that I live in right now, which is Johnson City, Tennessee, but anywhere. That's what I would feel like, what? I'd like to step on stage and be part of this, rather than just trying to do a gig for myself, just doing a gig to promote myself and my new record. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll tell you what to do is to reach out to Holly and get in touch with Jet Holden, because Jet's in Elizabethton.
All right. Yeah, I met him.
So Jet's in Elizabethton. He's right there. And,
that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I talked to him before. I wanted to.
Yeah, and you're in Amethyst Kia's hometown, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I talked to her, but she's a little big time right now.
No, of course she is. But yeah, I'll tell you that definitely get with Jet, because Jet is ready. So yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Well, listen. Let me send you my stuff, and I want your blunt, dead ass.
I can't do anything other than that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. It's definitely not mainline, but it's interesting. I like it. So I just, love to hear just whatever feedback. That's all I can do. And all I can tell you, man, is this has been an incredible conversation. I really enjoyed it. Hope to hear from you again. And anytime, I would love to just, rap to me about, something new. Feel free to just text me, say, hey, let's rap. Because, this is how first of all, I get motivated. Second of all, I get inspired. Thirdly, I learn something new. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that works. I'm here for it.
Thank you, my man.
You're welcome.
I guess this concludes it. Talk to you later.
All right. Have a great day.
Thanks again, Marcus.
You're welcome.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye.